Broke single dad buys diapers with last dollar. The lonely CEO behind him says, "I'll take them all." Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The automatic doors of a small grocery store slid open with a tired sigh. The wind outside carried a bite of late autumn, scattering dry leaves across the parking lot. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed softly, flickering against shelves half-stocked with the cheapest brands. A young father stood at the checkout counter, one hand clutching a small pack of baby diapers, the other fishing through the worn pockets of his jacket. Ethan Miles, 32 years old, once an auto mechanic, now laid off for 3 months. His dark hair was unkempt, his eyes ringed with sleepless nights. Behind him, his toddler, Liam, sat in a second-hand stroller, cheeks flushed from the cold. The child clutched a small stuffed bear with one missing ear, humming a tune only he understood. The cashier scanned the diapers. The screen blinked. "That will be $7.42. Aye. Ethan laid a crumpled handful of bills and coins on the counter. "I think that is all of it," he said quietly. The cashier hesitated. "You are a few cents short." Ethan's shoulders sank. He checked his pockets again, turning them inside out. A paperclip, an old receipt, nothing more. He gave a faint, embarrassed smile. "Can I take one out of the pack?" He joked weakly, but his voice cracked halfway. From the line behind him came a gentle voice. "You do not need to do that." Ethan turned. A woman stood there, elegant yet unassuming, dressed in a long gray coat. Her dark hair framed a face, both kind and tired in its own way. In her hands, a basket of groceries, milk, apples, coffee, things ordinary but perfectly arranged. "I will take them all," she said simply. The cashier blinked. "Ma'am?" "All of them. Add his to mine." Ethan froze. "No, please. You do not have to." She offered a soft smile. "I want to." Her tone left no room for pity, only quiet certainty. She handed the cashier her credit card, then turned back to Ethan. "Every parent has been where you are. Do not let pride steal from your child." The sound of the register clicking filled the silence. Ethan stared at the small pack of diapers now bagged and paid for, sitting before him like a miracle he did not ask for. He swallowed hard. "Thank you, really." She nodded once, as if she understood something deeper. "Take care of him," she said, her eyes flicking to the boy in the stroller. "He looks like he means the world to you." Ethan's throat tightened. "He does." The woman gathered her groceries and left before he could ask her name. The glass doors closed behind her, reflecting her figure disappearing into the rain. Outside, under the parking lot light, she paused for a moment, watching through the window as the young father lifted his son and kissed the child's forehead. A small smile touched her lips, then faded. She adjusted her coat collar, climbed into her black sedan, and drove off into the night. Ethan stood by the stroller, the receipt trembling in his hand. On the bottom, the cashier had written in looping pen strokes, "For Liam, from someone who believes in kindness." He looked at it for a long time before folding it carefully into his wallet. The world outside was still cold, but somehow it felt a little less cruel. He whispered to his son, "We will be all right, buddy. Somehow, we will be all right." The automatic doors sighed, closed behind them, and the sound of rain swallowed the rest. Rain drizzled against the cracked window of a small basement apartment on the edge of the city. Ethan set the pack of diapers down beside the crib, the paper bag still damp from the walk home. The heater rattled weakly, offering little warmth. The room smelled faintly of baby powder and instant coffee. Outside, traffic hummed like a distant ocean. Liam stirred in his sleep, a soft sigh escaping his tiny chest. Ethan watched him for a long moment, exhaustion shadowing his face. He brushed a hand through his messy hair and whispered, "We made it through another day, buddy." His voice trembled, not from cold, but from everything he was holding inside. On the small table beside the crib sat a stack of unopened bills, rent, electric, medical debt from his late wife's hospital stay. Every envelope looked heavier than the one before. He rubbed his temples and stared at the wall where a faded photograph was taped. It showed him, his wife Sarah, and baby Liam, smiling under the afternoon sun in a city park. Sarah's laughter seemed to echo in the back of his mind. He whispered, "You would know what to do. You always did." The next morning came gray and quiet. Ethan bundled Liam into his worn jacket, zipped the stroller cover, and stepped out into the chill. He stopped by a small diner near the bus stop. The owner, Mrs. Ruth, greeted him with the same tired kindness she gave every morning. "Coffee's still on the house, honey," she said. He nodded gratefully, sipping from the chipped mug while Liam giggled at the sound of the clinking spoons. Mrs. Ruth leaned against the counter. "Any luck with the job applications?" Ethan shook his head. "Not yet. I am trying the construction site near Pier 40 today. They are looking for drivers." "You keep trying," she said softly. "You are a good man. Good men do not stay down forever." Outside, the city was a mix of noise and movement. Ethan pushed the stroller toward the bus stop, passing office workers in pressed coats, delivery vans, and the faint rhythm of street musicians. Life moved forward even when he felt stuck. At the construction site, Ethan stood among a crowd of men waiting for a supervisor to appear. His hands were raw, his jeans stained from old grease. A foreman finally came out and called for experienced operators. Ethan stepped forward, voice steady. "I used to work maintenance at Eastfield Auto. I can handle heavy equipment." The foreman studied him, unimpressed but not unkind. "We pay by the day. You show up on time, you get paid. Miss a day, you are done." Ethan nodded. "I will be here." He worked until the light faded. His muscles ached, but he felt the old rhythm of purpose in his bones. When he picked up Liam from the daycare that evening, a small church basement where volunteers watched children for struggling parents, his son reached out with both arms and laughed. Ethan felt something stir in him, something like hope. Across the city, in a high-rise office wrapped in glass, Lauren Pierce sat at her desk. The same woman who had paid for the diapers now stared at a spreadsheet that seemed endless. Her assistant knocked softly. "Miss Pierce, your driver is waiting." Lauren nodded but did not move. The city glittered below her, each light another life she would never know. For all her success, the silence of her penthouse apartment weighted like a wound. Her mind drifted to the grocery store, to the look in that man's eyes, equal parts pride and desperation. She had seen that look before, years ago, in her father's face when he lost their home. It had carved something deep in her that money never filled. She reached into her purse and pulled out the extra receipt the cashier had given her that night. The words were still clear. "For Liam, from someone who believes in kindness." Lauren set it beside her laptop, her fingers resting on the edge of the paper. "Ethan Miles," she murmured, trying the name she had glimpsed on the receipt. "I wonder if you found your way." Outside her window, lightning flickered over the skyline. In another part of the city, Ethan rocked his son to sleep under the same gray clouds. The distance between them was only a few miles, but their worlds could not have been further apart, one built from marble and glass, the other from borrowed strength and quiet resilience. As Liam's breathing slowed, Ethan leaned back, eyes closing. "Tomorrow will be better," he whispered. The room was silent except for the hum of the city, steady and endless, carrying two strangers who had already changed each other's lives without knowing it. The next few weeks blurred together for Ethan. Each morning began before sunrise, his alarm clock humming softly on the nightstand beside a half-empty cup of cold coffee. He left Liam in the care of the volunteers at the church daycare and walked the 6 blocks to the construction site. The air always smelled of dust and diesel, and his breath came out in pale clouds against the chill. He worked without complaint, hauling, lifting, repairing the old machines that others avoided. His hands were cracked, but his spirit stayed firm. Each payday meant diapers, rent, and just enough food for another week. At night, he drew tiny doodles of cars and airplanes on scrap paper to entertain his son before bed. Sometimes, when the night grew quiet, he looked at the receipt taped on the wall above his desk, the one that said, "For Liam, from someone who believes in kindness." The ink had begun to fade, but it reminded him that even in the darkest moments, kindness could still find its way. One morning, as gray clouds gathered over the city, the foreman called out, "We have visitors from the main office today. Clean up your sections." Ethan wiped his hands on a rag and stepped back from the excavator he had been repairing. Minutes later, two black sedans pulled up near the gate. From one stepped Lauren Pierce, the chief executive officer of Pierce Urban Development. She wore a tailored navy coat, her hair neatly tied back, but her eyes scanned the site with quiet unease. The last time she had stood in a place like this was years ago, visiting her father's small construction firm before it had gone bankrupt. Her assistant handed her a clipboard. "They are behind schedule, but productivity has improved since they hired temporary staff," he explained. Lauren nodded absently, her gaze drifting toward the workers. That was when she saw him. Ethan stood near the far end of the yard, bent over an old generator. The wind tugged at his worn jacket, and the sunlight broke through just enough to touch the side of his face. For a moment, she did not recognize him. Then the memory returned: the grocery store, the diapers, the look of gratitude in his eyes. Lauren's breath caught. "That man," she said quietly. "Who is he?" The assistant followed her gaze. "That is one of the day laborers. Name is Ethan Miles, I believe. Single father, good worker, keeps to himself." Lauren's pulse quickened. She hesitated, debating whether to approach him, but curiosity won. She walked across the muddy path, her heels sinking slightly in the soft earth. Ethan glanced up as she neared, eyes narrowing in confusion. "Miss Pierce?" the foreman said, startled. "We did not expect—" "It is fine," she interrupted gently. "I just wanted to see the progress." Ethan straightened, wiping his hands on the rag. He did not yet realize who she was, only that she looked far too refined for this place. "Can I help you, ma'am?" he asked politely. Lauren studied him for a second longer, noting the tired lines around his eyes, the same eyes she had seen over a grocery store counter. "I believe we have met before," she said softly. Ethan frowned slightly. "I do not think so. At the market," she continued. "Late one evening, you were short a few cents." The realization dawned slowly, his face paled. "You," he said quietly. "You were the one who paid for the diapers," she finished with a small nod. "Yes." One. He stood frozen, unsure whether to thank her again or apologize for needing help in the first place. "I never got to tell you how much that meant," he said finally. "I wanted to, but you left so fast." Lauren smiled faintly. "It was nothing. It was everything," he corrected, his voice steady but soft. The foreman, sensing the moment, stepped back to give them space. Lauren glanced around the site, then back at him. "You work here?" "Every day," he said. "It keeps food on the table." Something in his answer struck her heart with quiet force. She nodded slowly. "You are doing good work. Real work." He shrugged. "It is what I know." She looked at him again, studying the way he stood, humble, cautious, yet proud. There was no trace of self-pity, only resolve. "I may have another kind of work for you," she said after a pause. "But we can talk about that later." Ethan blinked. "Another kind of work?" She smiled, mysterious but kind. "Yes, something that might suit you better." With that, she turned toward her car. The rain had started again, light and steady, dotting the shoulders of her coat. Ethan watched her go, unsure whether he had just imagined the whole exchange. As she reached the gate, Lauren looked back once. Their eyes met across the muddy distance, two worlds colliding again. Quietly, as if fate had drawn a perfect circle, he exhaled, glancing at the worn receipt in his pocket. The rain soaked through his gloves, but he barely felt it. Somewhere deep down, he sensed that life had just taken its first small, impossible turn. That night, Ethan could not sleep. The rain tapped against the window of his small apartment, a steady rhythm that echoed the thoughts tumbling through his mind. He kept replaying the moment she had said, "I may have another kind of work for you." What did that mean? Was she serious? Or was it just polite conversation from someone whose world would never cross his again? Morning came gray and restless. Ethan dropped Liam off at the daycare, promising he would return early. The boy pressed a tiny hand to his cheek before letting go, whispering, "Bye, Daddy." Those two words carried him through every hard day. At the construction site, the foreman approached him near the tool shed. "Miles, you got a visitor." Ethan turned and froze. Lauren Pierce stood there again, dressed simply this time in jeans, a beige coat, and boots already dusted with dirt. She smiled as if they were old acquaintances meeting by chance. "You work fast," she said lightly. Ethan wiped his hands, unsure what to do. "Miss Pierce, I did not expect—" "I know," she interrupted. "I wanted to talk before the crew arrives. Do you have a few minutes?" He nodded slowly. They walked toward the edge of the site, where the noise of the machines faded into the distance. Lauren folded her arms, glancing at the rising skyline. "When I saw you here yesterday, it stayed with me," she began. "You have the kind of persistence people overlook, and I am building a new community project that needs someone who understands real struggle." Ethan frowned. "What kind of project?" "A foundation for affordable housing," she said. "We are not just constructing buildings. We are trying to rebuild hope." He hesitated. "You think I could help with that?" Lauren turned to face him. "I do. You know what it means to survive when everything falls apart. That kind of honesty is rare." Ethan looked down, uncertain. "I am no architect or manager, Miss Pierce. I am just trying to get by." "Exactly," she said gently. "That is why you would fit. I do not need titles. I need someone who reminds this company who we are supposed to be helping." "Oh." He was quiet for a long moment. "Why me?" She smiled, small and sincere. "Because the night we met, I saw someone who still believed in kindness, even when life gave him no reason to." The words landed softly, like rain on glass. Ethan felt something shift inside him, hope mixed with fear. "If I say yes," he asked, "what happens next?" "You meet with my team tomorrow," she replied. "We will figure it out together." He nodded slowly, unsure whether to feel grateful or suspicious. "You are trusting a stranger." Lauren's eyes warmed. "Sometimes strangers are the only ones brave enough to care." They stood there for a while, silence stretching between them. The wind carried the sound of the city sirens, horns, and the faint cry of a gull above the river. When the crew began to arrive, Lauren extended her hand. Ethan hesitated before shaking it, his palm rough against hers. It felt like a small agreement between two people who did not yet understand how much this moment would change their lives. As she walked back toward her car, Ethan watched her go, the same question echoing in his mind. Why did this woman, who could have everything, choose to notice him? Back at his station, he picked up his tools again, but his thoughts were far away. Somewhere deep down, he felt the faint pull of something larger than coincidence, something that felt dangerously close to fate. The following morning, Ethan arrived at the Pierce Urban Development headquarters for the first time. The tall glass building towered above the street like a mirror reflecting the clouds. He hesitated before walking through the revolving doors, his boots still carrying the dust of the construction site. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and polished marble. The receptionist greeted him with a practiced smile. "Mr. Miles, Miss Pierce is expecting you. Please, take the elevator to the 22nd floor." He nodded and stepped into the elevator, watching the numbers rise. His reflection in the mirrored wall looked foreign, a man out of place, dressed in his cleanest shirt but still marked by calloused hands and weary eyes. When the doors opened, Lauren was already waiting. "Ethan," she said warmly, "I'm glad you came." He gave a small nod. "I said I would." She gestured toward a meeting room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "Come in. I want you to meet the team." Inside sat 3 people in suits, scrolling through tablets. Lauren introduced them project managers, designers, and a community liaison. Ethan listened quietly, unsure how to fit in. When one of them asked about his role, he shifted awkwardly in his seat. "I am still figuring that out," he admitted. Lauren smiled. "He is here to help us remember why this project exists." After the meeting, she led him to the construction model displayed near the window. Small plastic buildings, green spaces, and sidewalks filled the table like a miniature city. "This will be called Harbor Point," she said. "It is meant to give working families a chance to rebuild." Ethan traced a finger along the model's streets. "It looks perfect," he said softly. "But people like me do not live in places like this." That is exactly why we need you here," she replied. Their eyes met, and for a moment the noise of the office disappeared. There was a flicker of something unspoken, recognition, perhaps, or quiet respect. Lauren broke the silence. "Come with me. I want to show you something." They rode the elevator to the rooftop terrace, where the city stretched endlessly below them. The morning light made the skyline shimmer. "I come here when things get overwhelming," Lauren said. "It helps me remember the bigger picture." Ethan looked out across the horizon. "Must feel different from up here." "It does," she admitted. "But sometimes the higher you go, the lonelier it gets." He turned to her, surprised by the honesty in her tone. "You seem like someone who has everything." Lauren gave a small laugh. "Having everything is not the same as being happy." For the first time, Ethan saw beyond her confidence the fatigue behind her smile, the sadness in her eyes. "I guess we are both just trying to rebuild," he said quietly. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and nodded. "Maybe we can help each other do that." When he left the office later that day, he felt lighter. The city no longer looked as gray as before. He still did not know where this new path would lead. But for the first time in years, it felt like a door had opened, and behind it, there might be something more than survival. The days that followed settled into an unexpected rhythm. Ethan began working directly with Lauren's community team, visiting construction sites, talking with families who would one day live in the new buildings, and helping organize local hiring. His honesty and quiet determination quickly earned him the trust of the workers. Lauren watched him from a distance, often joining him during site visits. She admired how naturally he spoke to people, never as a superior, never as a man seeking praise, but as someone who understood what it meant to struggle. "You have a way of making people believe in something again," she told him one afternoon as they walked along the unfinished sidewalk. He smiled faintly. "I just listen. Most people do not get that chance." Sometimes, when the sun dipped behind the steel frames of the rising buildings, they stayed behind to talk. The conversations drifted from work to memories, from duty to dreams. Lauren shared stories of her childhood, how her father's company collapsed after he refused to bribe an investor. She confessed that success had not made her feel whole. "I built this company to prove I could do it," she said softly. "But somewhere along the way, I forgot what I was building it for." Ethan nodded slowly. "Maybe now you are finding it again." She looked at him with a quiet smile. "Maybe you are part of that reason." The words lingered in the air, delicate but undeniable. At the same time, Ethan's life began to shift. With a steady paycheck and flexible hours, he could spend more evenings with Liam. They visited the park, shared peanut butter sandwiches, and watched the sunset through the rusted swings. "Daddy has a new job," he would tell his son proudly. "A good one." Yet, under that warmth, something restless stirred. The more time Ethan spent with Lauren, the more he felt torn between admiration and distance. She belonged to a world of glass offices and black sedans. He still rode the bus, still counted every dollar before the week's end. One evening, after a long day reviewing blueprints, Lauren invited him to stay for dinner at the company lounge. The lights were soft, and music drifted faintly through the speakers. "To new beginnings," she said, raising her glass. Ethan hesitated before clinking his glass against hers. "To second chances." For a moment, their laughter filled the room, but then, silence. Their eyes met, and something inside both of them shifted. It was not grand or sudden, just the quiet awareness that connection had found its way in. As the evening ended, Lauren stood by the elevator, reluctant to leave. "Ethan," she said, her voice low, "you are changing this project more than you know." He looked at her, unsure what to say. "And you are changing me?" he finally admitted. The elevator doors opened, and she stepped inside, her reflection merging with the glass. "Good night, Ethan." When the doors closed, he stood there for a while, feeling both grateful and uneasy. He could not deny what was growing between them, but he also knew that lines between their worlds were fragile. Still, as he walked out into the night, the city lights no longer seemed distant. Somewhere above those streets, someone believed in him, and that was enough to keep him going. The quiet rhythm of their days did not last. Good things rarely stayed untouched for long. Rumors began to spread inside the company. Whispers in hallways, glances during meetings. Some employees said the chief executive officer was favoring the new consultant. Others suggested Ethan had used his story to gain sympathy. He tried to ignore it, focusing on his work and on the families who were depending on this project. But gossip had a way of finding its way into every corner. One afternoon, while Ethan was reviewing safety logs at the site, a man in a tailored suit approached him. It was Daniel Shaw, the company's chief financial officer. His smile was sharp, his voice polite but heavy with suspicion. "You are quite close to Miss Pierce these days," Daniel said. "That must be convenient." Ethan straightened. "We work together, that is all." "Of course," Daniel replied, glancing around. "Just be careful. People talk, especially when they think a charity case is being turned into a hero." The words stung, but Ethan said nothing. Daniel patted his shoulder with a grin that felt more like a warning and walked away. That evening, Lauren found Ethan sitting alone on the rooftop terrace. The sunset burned orange over the skyline. "You have been quiet today," she said gently. He looked up, his jaw tight. "People are saying things. About us. About why I am here." Lauren's smile faded. "Let them talk. You know the truth." He shook his head. "You do not understand. I have worked hard for everything, even the little that I have. I do not want anyone thinking I am here because you felt sorry for me." Her voice softened. "I do not feel sorry for you, Ethan. I respect you." He stood, pacing. "Then help me earn it. Do not protect me. Do not speak for me. Just let me do my job." She watched him, hurt flashing in her eyes. "Is that what you think I have been doing? Protecting you?" The tension between them tightened like a wire. Neither spoke for a long moment. Then Ethan said quietly, "You come from a world where you can fix things with one phone call. I come from a world where one mistake costs everything. We are not the same." Lauren took a step forward. "Maybe not, but that does not mean we cannot care about each other." He met her gaze, torn between anger and longing. "Maybe caring is the problem." The wind rose, carrying the sound of the city below. Lauren's expression hardened, not in anger, but in pain. "If that is how you feel," she said, "then maybe you should take some time away from the project." Ethan hesitated, then nodded once. "Maybe I should." He walked past her toward the stairwell. The door shut behind him, leaving Lauren alone under the fading sky. She pressed a hand to her chest, the ache deep and unexpected. That night, Ethan packed a small bag. He left the office key on the table beside the receipt that had started it all. As he closed the door behind him, the words on the paper caught the light. "For Liam, from someone who believes in kindness." He paused, staring at it, then whispered, "Maybe kindness has its limits." Oh. The next morning, his desk was empty, and the city moved on without him. But somewhere deep inside, both of them knew this was not the end, it was the storm before the truth. The office felt emptier without Ethan. Lauren tried to throw herself into work, attending meetings, reviewing blueprints, approving budgets, but nothing silenced the echo of his words. Maybe caring is the problem. Each time she passed his vacant desk, the sting of regret deepened. A week later, the project hit a snag. A financial audit revealed missing funds in the community housing budget. The number was large enough to raise alarms across the board. At the morning briefing, Daniel Shaw, the chief financial officer, stood before the boardroom table with his usual smug calm. "It appears some funds were redirected through unauthorized accounts," he said. "We have traced the approval to someone working closely with Miss Pierce, Mr. Ethan Miles." Lauren froze. "That is impossible," she said sharply. "He did not have access to those accounts." Daniel lifted a document. "His signature is right here." The board members began murmuring. Lauren felt the room tilt. "No," she whispered. "Someone forged this." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Then I suggest you find proof, before the press does." When the meeting ended, Lauren sat alone in the empty conference room, the city's light spilling across the glass. Her mind raced back to every file, every decision, every time Daniel had insisted on handling the paperwork. Her gut told her the truth she did not want to face. Ethan had been framed. That night, she drove to the site where the first building was nearing completion. The place was quiet, flooded by the orange glow of streetlights. She found the security guard and asked for the financial access logs stored in the system. Hours later, buried inside the files, she discovered the evidence transactions rerouted by Daniel's private terminal, stamped with Ethan's copied signature. Her heart pounded. "You did this," she murmured, her voice trembling. The next morning, Lauren walked into the board meeting carrying a folder. Before you act on false information, she said, you should see this. She projected the digital logs onto the screen. Daniel Shaw embezzled company funds through a shell account, using forged signatures to shift the blame. Daniel's face drained of color. That is absurd. Lauren's voice remained steady. Security cameras show your terminal active at midnight on the same nights those transfers occurred. The board erupted with whispers. The chairman called security. As Daniel was escorted out, he glared at her. You will regret this, Lauren. Protecting that man will ruin you. She met his gaze. If standing up for an honest man ruins me, then maybe I need to be ruined. By the afternoon, the news had spread. Lauren called Ethan, but his phone went straight to voicemail. She left a message, her voice breaking. Ethan, I was wrong. You were right about the world judging too quickly, but you did not deserve any of this. Please come back. That evening, she held a press conference to clear his name. Cameras flashed as she spoke into the microphones. The man accused of wrongdoing is innocent. His integrity reminded me why this project began to rebuild faith, not fortune. When the conference ended, she stepped away from the lights and looked up at the dark sky. Somewhere out there, she hoped Ethan was listening. She had done what was right, but the victory felt hollow without him beside her. Still, justice had been served, and for the first time in years, she felt proud, not of her power, but of her courage to use it. 2 weeks passed before Lauren saw him again. The city was preparing for the grand opening of the Harbor Point Community Center, the first building of the project that had begun everything. Banners hung across the street, children played near the new playground, and cameras waited for her speech. But behind every smile, Lauren felt an empty ache. Ethan had not answered her calls, not a single message. As she stepped up to the podium, the crowd fell quiet. This project was built for people who deserve a second chance, she began, her voice strong but trembling slightly. And it was inspired by one man who reminded me that compassion is not weakness, it is strength. She paused, scanning the faces in the audience, and then she saw him. Ethan stood near the back, holding Liam in his arms. The boy waved a tiny hand, and Lauren's breath caught in her throat. He looked tired but peaceful, as if time had washed away the anger. She smiled faintly and continued, Every brick here carries a story of struggle, of hope, and of kindness. That is what keeps this city alive. When the applause faded, Ethan walked forward slowly. The crowd parted for him. Lauren met him halfway near the stage. For a moment, neither spoke. The noise around them dimmed until all she could hear was the soft hum of the wind between the new buildings. I saw the press conference, he said finally. You did not have to do that. Oh? I did, she replied. You were blamed for something you did not do. I could not let that stand. He looked at her, searching her face for the truth he already knew. You went through all that trouble just to clear my name? Lauren shook her head gently. Not just your name, my conscience. For the first time in weeks, Ethan smiled. You did more than that. You gave me back my faith in people. She exhaled, the weight lifting from her chest. And you gave me back my reason for doing this work. Liam reached out toward her, giggling. She bent down, touched his tiny hand, and whispered, You must be the reason your dad keeps fighting. Ethan laughed softly. He is. Always. A few hours later, as the sun dipped below the skyline, the crowd gathered inside the new community hall for the dedication ceremony. Lauren unveiled a framed display on the wall. Inside the glass was a single receipt, the one that read, For Liam. From someone who believes in kindness. Gasps rippled through the room. Ethan stared at it, emotion flooding his eyes. You kept it? Lauren nodded. It reminded me where everything began. A simple act of kindness that built all of this. He took a step closer. You could have given that credit to anyone. I did, she said softly. To you. Silence settled, warm and full. Then Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Liam told me we should give you something too. Lauren opened it. Inside was a silver key pendant. The first key from the first home built here, he said. To remind you that doors open both ways. Tears shimmered in her eyes. She whispered, Thank you. The lights dimmed as the crowd began to cheer. Lauren turned toward Ethan, her voice barely above the noise. So, what happens now? He smiled, taking her hand. Now we build the rest together. And under the glowing lights of Harbor Point, surrounded by laughter and the sound of new beginnings, two people who once met in a moment of need finally found home in each other, and in the kindness that had never stopped growing.